So, and you know what's funny? I'm just pausing this.
For the 8th, would 3 be approved as circulated? Councillor McCabe, Councillor Evans, all in favor, carried. Recommendation that minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on October the 25th, 2023 be adopted. Councillor Evans, each, all in favor. Thank you, carried. Kate, we have some delegations today. We've got Rick Collins from Urban Systems, Development Cost Charge Bylaw Update. Is Rick zooming in?
Yep, it's on the screen.
Perfect. Hi, Rick. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very, very much. So we met a little while ago to talk about the Development Cost Charge Bylaw. And at that time, we went through the context, the purpose, the projects, and the resulting financial numbers that resulted. And so during that, we had a really good discussion. And there's two things that we talked about. One was the need that the next step was to go to a public meeting, which happened on the 1st. And then the other one was to talk about should smaller homes, specifically like the carriage homes, let's call them, pay the same amount as a regular single family house. So you can imagine they're usually a smaller unit. They might have less people in them. So should they pay the same as somebody who might build a 4,000 square foot house or whatever, or should they pay less? So what we did is when we went to that public meeting, we included all the slides, the panels that we had before that we reviewed together last time. Plus we added one, which was about the carriage house. And so what I'll do right now is I will just share my screen if that's, I can't share my screen, but that's okay. I can just talk you through it. Just the idea of the carriage house, what would be the pros or cons of carriage houses paying the same as a single family house? And then we looked at it from, well, are they more like a mobile home, really, in terms of size and occupation and literally impact on the infrastructure? And so we looked at a reason to have them pay less than a single family, so pay the mobile home, was it might encourage property owners to develop some of that underutilized land, or to increase density in some neighborhoods, which is something that's on top of mind for many folks in the province. Again, smaller homes might have less people, and then it might also make just them more affordable if you could save a little bit of money. And then on the flip side of that, though, is that some might argue that a carriage house would have the same impact on infrastructure as a typical house, because some houses, they might be bigger, but there's two people, so you're using the same amount of laundry, the same amount of water, that sort of thing, same amount of trail use, all those sort of things. So those are the two sides of the discussion. So what we did is we went and we looked at one situation, which was what we had last time, which was single family homes would be going up to a DCC rate of 12,107. So that would be what the cost would be for single family home or a carriage house. And then we said, well, we have to, with the way the DCCs work, you have to kind of take an estimate of what you think how many single family homes, how much industrial land. We just took a guess. And we thought it was reasonable to say, let's just say in the next 20 years, there'll be 50 new carriage homes, just as a number, just over a couple of years. And so that moved from going from 160 residential, we went from 110 residential and 50 down to carriage houses. And so what's really interesting, though, is that, and this is the important thing to remember, is that if you reduce the cost for somebody else, everybody else pays a little bit more. And I don't know if I can share my screen, but because then I could show my slide here. We'll try again. Here we go. Just give it 1 second. There we go. So let me know if you can't see this, but this is what it comes down to at the end. This was the exact panel that was showed to the community members that came in, and we asked for their feedback about this slide. This slide got the most attention. This panel got the most attention. So you can see the first column here. So carriage houses charged same as single family. This is the numbers that we looked at last time together. This is the exact numbers. You can see there's 160. And the only difference between this green column and this is this change from 160 all paying the same 12,000 versus we took 50. We just assumed it might be a reasonable number, just over 2 a year going on to be 50 would be sliding from 160 to 50. So what's really interesting, you'll see is that, you know, if they would have paid 12,107, then for carriage houses, they would pay almost 8,800, so 8,777. But the offset of that is everybody else has to take up the offset. Somebody has to pay that. So this is what happens. This is how the numbers work out. So you can see they're the same as a mobile home. So for example, the average single family would pay approximately $200, just over $200 more for a new home. Mobile homes also would pay just over $150 more per for mobile home or RV unit. So those are the numbers that that result, and that I propose that council focus the discussion on today. And then after that, you know, we're burning daylight. We want to make sure that we move this process along. You know, it's a priority for council and staff, because after this, we will send the bylaw draft to the ministry and ask how long it'll be for to do. Usually they like to do a draft review before it goes to the 3 readings by council. And then after the 3 readings happen, it'll go to their formal review, which could take a couple months. But if they have timing available, they'll do that quicker review before it goes to 3 weeks. So we'll find out exactly how long it'll take. See if we want to wait for that. It's only a couple of weeks. That's great. If it's like 2 months, we should probably just do the 3 readings and move on. So that's the next step, which will follow through, regardless of what decision we make today about the carriage homes paying the same as a residential lot, or saying, you know what, it's more like a mobile home. Let's have them pay the same as a mobile home. So I just turn the conversation back to council for questions, or more importantly, for views about the numbers. I'll leave the numbers on the screen here, I guess, because I know there's lots of numbers to look at for the first time. But so I'll just leave that up unless somebody wants to take over the screen.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, so council. Nicole, do you have anything you want to add to this prior to council comments? No? Okay. Council, do you have any comments? Councillor Bushel.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm not sure if Kelly or Nicole, we didn't receive that in the last presentation, did we? I printed it off, but I didn't see it before.
Hey, Kelly.
Yeah, no, so at the last meeting, there was a discussion, do we want to do a reduced dollar value for a secondary suite or a carriage home? So we talked to Rick and he modified that just to see what the public, when we did our public open house, we had both the options there to see what the feedback was. So you're right, it wasn't on the last one, that's new.
Okay, yeah, if we could get a copy, that would be great, but myself, I think they should be the size, should be charged roughly the size of a park model, because they are, here's a family maybe putting in a carriage home for rental or for themselves, and and maybe they rent their house out on a long-term basis, it would, you know, they're trying to add to the housing crisis that we have. So I think, being the size of them, it would match up to a motorhome or RV or something, whatever that, park model, whatever that may be. So I kind of like the, downsize rate compared to the full rate that the residential, you charge the DCCs on a residential home myself. Thank you.
Councillor Rich.
Through the chair. Yeah, I'm with Councillor Bushel on this. We are through, and I'm part of the housing committee, and we're working really hard on adding stock into Sycamoose. We're 9% rentals in Sycamoose, where a healthy rate would be about 35%. And we need to keep adding on, and so we have to make these affordable. And I think that's really important that we think about that. So when someone's going to put this in, that they've got, you know, they can afford to do it.
Thanks, Councillor Rich. Councillor McCabe.
Yep, thank you, through the chair. What was the public input on this? I missed that part. What was the public saying?
They echoed what the last two councillors mentioned. Very, very similar to that idea of affordability, make it more, help promote the development of them. So what can we do to facilitate that along?
Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor McCabe?
One other question.
No, go ahead.
Thanks. So at what point are we going to waive DCC charges as part of our infill initiative? Or are we like, but if somebody entered into a housing agreement that house was going to be a rental unit and not just flip it, so there's more infrastructure in the property and sell, we might even waive DCC charges. Am I missing something there?
Kelly, do you want to address the DCC charges?
Yeah, so most definitely. So I think there's still a plan to have a discussion on for housing, what we would be prepared to waive some DCCs or partial DCCs. So for affordable housing versus just regular housing. So right now, our DCC bylaw, I believe, has a definition. It isn't a really good definition, so it's something that we'll have to look at. But in terms of it for a not-for-profit, and it has to be, there's a definition for affordability within our DCC bylaw. So there is something in there already. So, and maybe Rick can comment on when would be a good timing to crack that open to have a discussion about it.
Yeah, I think, you know, getting this, if I may, you know, having this question answered about the carriage houses is kind of a step along that way. And in terms of if you decide to waive in the future, that's always something that can happen at the council's pleasure. You could even have something where you know, you don't charge building permit fees or something like that if for the first 5 carriage houses. I know we talked about that. There's a different presentation on that when I was there last time, that there's a few different incentives that you could look at, not just for affordable, but trying to promote that densification as well. And then, yeah, specific to affordable housing, yeah, it's something that, yeah, there's currently wording in there, and I think it'd be at the council's pleasure, you know, whenever they're ready to have that discussion. Either way, whether it's done now or whether the bylaw passes and then there's a subsequent mechanism that the municipality chooses to use to waive them, there's a few options open to you.
Thanks, Rick. Councillor Beach.
Through the chair, we need to make this look attractive enough for people to actually start developing housing the way we know we need it to be developed. So I think we have to give that serious consideration when we look at the comparison of these two formats.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. If council did decide to waive some DCC charges, a percentage of them or all of them, or building permit, or could that be offset if we're successful with the federal housing accelerator fund to offset the loss of that? Because like there's if we waive DCC. We're losing revenue to accommodate the infrastructure, to accommodate the additional housing.
Thanks, Councillor McCabe. Yeah, we have to be really careful with DCCs and make sure that we're backfilling that. Absolutely, because that does go to our infrastructure. Kelly, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, most definitely. And so we do have an application in on this for the Housing Accelerator Fund, and that's exactly what it does, is it helps. If we offer housing incentives, we'll get reimbursed for those housing incentives, but they're very specific, and we don't know yet if we've been approved for it or not, but hopefully within the next couple months we'll know. But you're right, that would offset those.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey, do you have something that you want to add?
Yeah, I do actually.
you.
Sorry, I was trying to get your attention. It's just hard to do that here. I just have a question about the industrial rate of the DCC. I think we might have went through this before, but it's less than half of the commercial or institutional. And what's the rationale behind that?
Sure, I can speak to that. Yeah, we did discuss it before, and it's a very good question. So that it's worth addressing again for sure. This is, when you do a DCC bylaw, you're dealing with averages, and so typically on average, in industrial, you can see it goes off of per square meter.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of industrial developments of per square meter building, you'll have a very big building compared to for the amount of water use, especially typically in what you'd expect in Sycamus. You don't expect to have a sawmill or a pulp and paper mill coming anytime soon, perhaps, but of a large scale. So the average industrial, which is also a light industrial as well too, right? So a lot of warehousing, even in manufacturing, get a lot of warehousing and office type setting for. So that as compared to say commercial, where commercial you could have a restaurant or some uses that are, again, first and foremost smaller footprint, so they're paying a little bit more per square meter to account for the fact that they're smaller, and they can have that more demand per square meter of their building. And again, it's debatable, and I for every example that I throw up of a commercial building that will use more water per square meter, I'm just saying water, for there's parks, there's sewer, there's storm, then so more water than an industrial. Somebody else can throw another example that's the exact opposite. We could do that all day long. But on average, and this is kind of all I even say is, as industry wide in the DCC situation, that typically industrial creates less demand on that infrastructure per square meter of building size.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Colin.
so maybe.
Councillor Bailey, do you have more to add?
Yeah, I do. So I was going to make that comparison actually, because I mean, there's many commercial units that would just be retail, that wouldn't be very intensive on a water use basis. And I just wonder if we're trying to offset this question around residential carriage homes and where does that money come from? Why would we be keeping this industrial so low? I mean, I could certainly see on a restaurant level on a commercial, fine, there's more water use. But when we're just talking about a general retail store, there really isn't. And I wonder if we're setting this at $63 a square meter, if what we're trying to do is, if we're going to try to get commercial infill down Main Street, whether we're just kind of hurting ourselves here. Maybe if we equalize them a little bit more, because I mean, what I see in terms of industrial development around Sycamus, we're even talking about storage units, things like that. Some with kitchens in it, some with water hookups and things like that. So I don't know if you want to expand on that anymore, or if this is just a question of policy choices.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. It comes down to that policy decision. This is why it's good to have this conversation. I also put it out there in terms of what is the average square footage of the average commercial building that could be on Main Street versus the average industrial building that could be out in the industrial park area. You also don't want to, if you raise the industrial, there's just two sides of the story. If you raise the industrial quite a bit, if you have I'm just going to say 5,000 square meter building, that's pretty big, but if you're looking at $150,000, but if you had a 500 square foot commercial, you're looking at I'll just do it right now, 500 square meter building times 63 is $31,500. So you don't want to make commercial industrial so the question first and foremost, so there's an airplane going overhead. the first and foremost, the discussion is it about bringing industrial up, which isn't what I'm hearing. It's more about bringing commercial down. And then there's two things I'll say about that. There's one way of doing it, which is if you bring it down, then everybody else's goes up because you get, it's like a teeter-totter here. Bring somebody down, everybody has to go up. And the other way too, you can see some communities will do like a waiving of the DCCs in a certain commercial core, for example, or a deferral of DCCs or a reduction of DCCs. You could set it on to a certain location. Some communities will do that if they're looking at promoting commercial development, retail development happening in their downtown versus the fringe area. Those are different things you could do on above and beyond your base DCC bylaw.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ian. Councillor Bushel.
To the chair, yeah, Rick, if someone was to build a home with a suite in it, would that make any change to their DCCs, or would they just be classified as one resident? We do have that happening.
It's one resident, I believe. Don't quote me on that off the top of my head, but I believe it's one resident.
Yeah, the reason I ask is they do have utility, like they have a separate hydrometer for a suite.
Yeah.
A separate water meter for a suite. So we do have that happening in some of the subdivisions in town. So I was just curious if there should be a separation there as well.
Yeah. Well, there definitely could be. I just don't remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I went through this. So.
Because I think probably, we're not breaking ground here. There's other communities that
absolutely
carriage homes or also suites within their house. So,
absolutely. And that's one thing I can say is that, with some, I'm going to say this in a good way. Like this is an absolute compliment. There's nothing groundbreaking or very, very odd in your bylaw. It's very much meat and potatoes approach, which is again kind of what you want to have in these bylaws. You don't want to have twists and curves and make things complex for people looking to develop, right?
Thanks, Rick. Council, any more questions? Thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate it. We've got lots to digest here. So thank you.
No problem. You want me to stay on for the discussion? Or will this?
Do you guys have any more questions for Rick? No, we're good. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you as well. Okay. All right, moving forward. Sycamus Communities in Bloom update. Take it away, Deb.
So yeah, I just thought it was a good time to have a quick review with you guys. I've been, as you know, we've always made the downtown revitalization a core part of what we've worked on for the last little while. Oh, sorry, I thought maybe I was doing something wrong. So I think we have done a fabulous job, as I mentioned in my my notes. We've gone from 3 blooms to 5 blooms. I think the downtown is fabulous compared to what it used to. But having a revitalized downtown is more than about how it looks. It's about activating it and bringing people downtown too. And I have been doing I have been helping Judy with the farmers market. And I feel like we're almost in a little bit of a death spiral, like regardless of the number of vendors and people, we've had fires, we've had smoke. It's just, it just seems like there's one thing after another. So I really feel like it's time to do something about that and trying to turn that around and utilize the spaces that we have worked so hard to create, because it does, it looks fabulous. You want to bring people down into that. So basically Daryl and I talk on a fairly regular basis, probably more than he would like, but we will continue to work on projects. If you guys are thinking of that in terms of physical projects, happy to help out, happy to help the businesses and such. But I want to make the activating those spaces a focus for this year. So to make that happen, want to get a lot more community involvement, and I've already been talking to people about that, but more in the way of signage, more in the way of getting the word out and bringing people downtown. So I know that is a bit of a change up from what I've done. I have talked to the volunteers. They're very happy to continue with things like the cleanup and with helping out with the weeding and keeping things looking good in that. But they are on side with the approach that we've come up with. And so I really just wanted to get council's input and thoughts on that, because it is a fairly significant change. So the other thing I would mention is I brought along one of our art boards. We're going to continue with the Arts Council, partnering with them in the art boards each year. Next year, we're talking about having a Bungie theme, but we're also going to look at some more specific places like pickleball courts, where we're going to add some art boards around there, community sports, things that are more consistent with that. So that'll be ongoing. The work we do with banner people will be ongoing, but really trying to define some areas downtown with things like maps, as well as the signage and that, in terms of art walks, garden walks, heritage walks, and building on all the things that we put together so far. So actually identifying the locations so people can come downtown and go see it as well. So I don't know if other than that, that's pretty much it. Cleanup, I don't know if you noticed, but I put the date in there, April 27th, which is consistent with what we've done in past years. So and I bounced that off Daryl and Gordon, and they think that was okay. So I will remind people about getting it in the community calendar and get closer to the date, but it's really just generally what we're thinking of. And like this year, no plans for having the judges come in. I think that we need to focus a bit more on ourselves for this year in terms of making these things happen. It's going to be a lot of work. So.
Absolutely. Thanks, Deb. Okay, Councillor Rich.
To the chair. Thanks, Deb, for all of this. And we've been in contact. I do lots of volunteering with different things. And when we speak to the farmers market, I don't know if it's something where the town can get more involved, like with the kids part. Because when there's things for the kids to do, the parents will come to the market because they want to not have to entertain their kids on Friday night. And kids are asleep, between 4 and 7. So I don't know if that's something we can discuss as a council and with the rec program, that we come up with something that we can maybe have a weekly where we can support Deb in the market. It's a great market. I think we've all been there on a Friday night. We need to build it. If you look at some of the other markets, if you go to Enderby, if you go to Armstrong and Salmon Arm market, we're actually on a different time, and it's actually a really good, like, we don't overshadow anyone. And people actually go on market circuits, which sounds funny, but it's actually like a hobby that you go from one market to the next. So I think we can easily get there with some hard work and some help from council and just kind of continuing to promote it. And I appreciate you taking this on and championing it because I think it's gonna be great.
Councillor Bushel.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, Deb, we can't thank you enough for all you're doing for the community and, working with all the non-for-profits or the Legion and Public Works and all the businesses. You really spruce the place up. You're doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, momentum is a hard thing to get and a hard thing to keep, especially when you have lousy weather and smoky skies that really, I think, were the things that really hampered the momentum from continuing for the farmers market. A lot of that stuff was like happenstance that really hurt it. The other thing is, I was going to ask you, Deb, where do you think it would be a good idea to put a sign saying we have the 5 bloom status kind of thing? You thinking end of Main Street? Where do you envision?
It's a good question, because we did a little bit of communities in bloom signage in the past, with the litter-free community because the judges had recommended that. And so where you have your sycamore signs is a good place to have the 5 bloom. But you could also really focus on doing a little bit more downtown as well. I'm really open to the possibilities there. Because that, and it's not that our efforts have been exclusively downtown, but it has been a large part of our effort. And so, like Main Street, I whatever. I don't know. And that's kind of what I'm throwing out to you guys. Because obviously signage and branding and everything else, it's bigger than us. But it's one of those things where it kind of got away from me a little bit this year. And we made 5 blooms. We should be saying something.
So if I may, I was thinking, we've got kind of like that Main Street landing, and that's where a lot of people from out of town walk by that when it's busy season. And I was thinking, that we have banners that often change and highlight things like Shea Weber and stuff like that. And maybe we could put it up there and people would be able to see it well when it's tourist season and we could brag a little bit.
Yeah,
It's just-
absolutely.
I think that's a great idea too. I was just thinking of that. And Daryl, you're kind of nodding your head.
Where you said it.
It's all over that.
Anyway,
Oh, sorry.
another quick thought, and I referred to it here, but my thinking is that the key to making the farmers market successful is getting that momentum. And the way we get that is about making it a community event first and foremost, because with the tourism, the visitors, all that will get built on once you've got that core. You want to get the residents coming down and enjoying their downtown and taking advantage of the kids' events, the service groups, serving burgers, and just making it almost a bit of a little fair farmers market. And once you do that, then the vendors will definitely start coming and the people will start coming, like we were in a little bit of a death spiral.
So just a thought, you have Riversong Guitars now manufacturing here. So maybe, occasionally you could use Mike and some guitars to bring a bigger draw, because that's, it's pretty exciting. It's a interesting project. And Councillor Rich.
Through the chair. So are we going to put QR codes on these signs? Like, I'm wondering if it's so geocaching, we've really cashed in on that. Excuse the pun, but people come from Vancouver and all over the places. Who knew that geocaching was like a traveling thing, but it actually is. And Sycamoose is doing really well with that. Is like looking at flowers also something that people drive around and do on a Sunday? I don't know.
And I have been talking to Carly, and like we haven't got too far yet, but talking about the maps and and QR codes and all of those sorts of things, I think will be useful in terms of really making it work. So
Thanks, Deb. Councillor Beach.
Through the chair, Debbie, I want to thank you for the work that you've done, because I only have to look at the resource center fence all the time. I've cleaned it up now, but when it's blossoming and it's wonderful, and you got us started on that, so. Do you ever dream of a winter garden? Because I know Ian's on here somewhere and he was the one that brought it up initially. Now, I'm not saying I have a concept of it, and I think we're doing a fantastic job. You're doing a fantastic job of the seasonal gardening that we're used to. And I just know that we've talked about it before. And is there a way that we can start thinking about an extension that will also take care of those adverse events during the summertime where a lot of people can't safely come out because of smoke and that kind of thing. So I know eyes will be rolling. I know they will be.
No, you're absolutely right.
But it's another sort of dimension of.
And like Ian has said before, it comes back to this idea of activating our spaces.
Yeah.
And not just in the summer, but in the winter as well.
Yeah.
And I will be honest with you, I haven't given it a lot of thought. Daryl's done a great job in terms of making the planters look, seasonal and festive and
Absolutely.
of course with downtown and the lights. I love it. That in itself will bring people into the area, just seeing that it's welcoming. But in terms of really kind of, some of the other spaces and like tobogganing and skating and all these sorts of things. And I haven't given it a lot of thought, but I've written myself a note.
Awesome. Thanks, Deb. Anyone else have anything for Deb? Deb, I want to thank you for all that you do. And Daryl, thank you and your team as well. I drove past downtown last night and it's looking really, really good. So
Just think about what it used to look like.
oh yeah, no, I know.
Downtown at night in the winter.
I know.
You banged on it and it was closed and there was no lights and it's
Absolutely. These things take time, right? But it's happening little by little. And thank you so much for everything that you do. Thanks, Deb. Okay, moving right along. Discussion items. We're going to go to the Shuswap Healing Center budget update, Kelly, and we have Scott Builders here and Brian Marr as well. So Kelly, you and the team can take it away.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is before you today, no decisions need to be made. It's just for information. We just received some preliminary firm numbers for the building shell and the site works, and it's more than what we originally budgeted. So I want to let everybody know about it, have a discussion about it with our project manager and our builder online, and then I haven't even had an opportunity to go along with Bianca line by line through the budget. We will be doing that next week, and then we will be following this up with a discussion in our finance committee on November 22nd to get so council has more information, and then we will potentially bring that contract for the shell building and the site works to the November 22nd regular meeting. Not the interior space, because the interior space still, that number isn't firm. We still need to make some modifications in the interior. So I don't want us to focus today too much on the interior side of things in terms of exact layout and everything, because that will be fluid, 3 or 4 weeks. We haven't firmed that in yet. So, but I got the numbers, so I just wanted to share them with council so that everybody was aware. So preliminarily, I'm just going to go over this really high level, and then I have Scott Builders online, and they'll go highlight some of the key changes and why some of the items are more. So the budget from 2023 to 2024, there was some cost savings here by changing the architect. I believe that saved us 82,000. So we used Douglas Cardinal for the original design, and then for all the other drawings, we switched to a different architect that saved us some dollars. This is the increase here, which is really the cost of the building and the site works, which there's letters attached. So the shell and the site is 6.4, and the interior is 2.4, and this isn't as such a firm number. This 6.4 has been tendered out and secured, so that price is firm. But to ask council or anybody to make a decision on the 6.4, we wanted to know what the total cost would be so that we would make sure that we have sufficient funds and that everybody knew what they were making end result. To date, we have, so we're going from 8 million to 10 million. So to date, we have spent 748, which leaves 9.4 million left to spend. And this summarizes, the good news is we have almost $8 million worth of grant money to apply, confirmed grant money to apply to this project. The provincial government and the federal government strongly support this project, and it shows by amount of grant money that has been allocated towards it. So we have the original 5.9, then we were awarded an additional 300 from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and then we received our Growing Communities Fund, which we have confirmation that we are allowed to apply those grant monies to this project to take us to just over 7.9 million. And then since 2019, additional funds have been going into a reserve for the Healing Center. And so the remainder of that is planned to be funded from reserves. So that's a high level capital. I do also want to talk about the operating budget, but I wanted to, first of all, focus on capital. Also in this, in their letters, it excludes furnishings and equipment. We have a separate budget, an allowance for the furnishings and the equipment, which is partially funded from our equipment reserves and partially funded from the Shuswap Hospital Foundation, who the executive director I've spoken with. And once we have a more itemized list of medical equipment that we need, they are open to looking at funding a portion of that. So we're just, Karen and I are working through the exact equipment that we need once we determine the exact layout inside, and then we'll make those next steps. So we do have a pretty healthy allowance for office equipment and medical supplies, as well as any additional outside works. We have another couple $100,000 for that funded by the Community Works Fund. So that will cover the entire project there. So just so everybody knows. And with that, I'm just going to open it to, I believe, who is online here. I don't know if Brian or Will wants to take the floor and just high level go over before we open the floor to some questions. The reasons behind the increase from 6.7 to 8.
Will, why don't you take that?
Yeah. So I can talk about, it's Will Woodward with Scott Builders. I can talk about sort of the changes that we saw from our initial concept to the redesign as a result of the archaeological piece. So when we changed or reorganized, reorientated the building, we pushed it to the east side of the property. With the geotechnical report, there on the east side of their property, there's a significant area of unsuitable material that has to be excavated out. So we need to remove that. That was not initially contemplated. Also, with the geotechnical report, we essentially pinholed the site, geotechnical and the archaeological investigation. We pinholed the site, so there's additional mitigation requirements from the geotechnical to ensure that our foundation system works properly or is secure and functional. Additional to that, we had to raise the building 1.5 meters. That was not initially sort of conceptualized in the initial Douglas Cardinal design. So additional costs to bring in fill material to raise the building. As a result of raising the building, that introduces a series of retaining walls in and around the building. Retaining walls on the north side of the building, retaining walls on the west side of the building, and then retaining walls on the south side of the building. In addition to the retaining walls, we now introduce a handicap accessible ramp on the south side of the building to allow individuals with mobility problems to access the site or up into the building, as well as stairs. And then with the archaeological piece, we had to split the parking lot. That's a fairly simple design exercise. From a construction exercise, we're not allowed to engage or work within the confines of the archaeological piece. We almost treat them as two separate pieces. So there's that there as well. The civil designer came back and added stormwater cisterns to assist with the outflow of stormwater in the event of a large rain event or water event, just to slow the release of water into the storm system. So that added cost to the project as well. When we look at the building, some of the changes within the building itself, the structural steel was adjusted and changed. Obviously, our window design changed. Our layout completely changed. It was fundamentally changed. That necessitated a redesign of the structural system, which increased a couple of the large monolith frames within the structure itself. There were some modifications to the facility height. We also expanded the raised portion of the building. Initially, it was just over the community space that was pushed out to go over the traditional healing space. With that, we also introduced clear story lighting to drop light into both the community space and into the traditional healing space. We redesigned the parapets and particularly around the raised building. In the initial concept, there wasn't a lot of treatment to that in terms of treatment that matched the Douglas Cardinal original design. So we've captured that and added that to the building. And then as well, a generator wasn't contemplated in the first design. And also with relocating the building sort of centrally located to flipping it and pushing it as close as we could to fit it on the site to the north boundary line, we had to fire rate the north wall. So that introduced a whole other series of complexities to that. When we did our building modeling in the first building, we did the building energy model in the second building. It also had us update the wall cavities. It increased the wall cavity design and construction there. So that has impacted it somewhat. So those are sort of high level changes that have impacted the overall costing increases. And we've also seen over the last 18 months with inflation and costing associated with construction just continual rise there. So when we tendered that, we landed in the middle of that, and that has impacted our costing there as well. But high level, those are the changes that impacted costing. Brian, any additions, thoughts?
No, I think that's a good summary for it. And I think what we should point out, though, is that these numbers are now based on significant subtrade input. I think Scott Builders went out to 255 subtrades, so it was a wide spread of quotations. So we're very confident on the numbers now as it relates to what it costs, and that it was appropriately and aggressively priced to ensure that the DOS had the best value from the development of all the different elements, whether it's concrete or steel or wall systems.
Thanks, Brian. Council, do we have any questions? Ian? In first? Ian, Councillor Bailey?
Yep. Okay, sorry, just unmuted
No
myself.
worries.
I'm just getting used to this thing again. Just a question. Well, I mean, I have several, but let's start with the generator. I mean, that's a pretty big ticket item at 265,000. Why do we need it?
So the mechanical system is a heat pump system that's electrically based. And it also has a propane backup in it, or propane is augmented from a propane system as well. If there's an electrical failure within the facility, then we're losing our heat source to the facility. So, right. So you need a backup generator. Now, if we switch to a diesel powered backup generator, there is a savings opportunity there as well, right? But right now it's a propane backup generator because the units on the roof are propane powered. So I have a heat pump mechanical system that has, once you get down to -18 or -20, propane comes in and augments or assists with the heating as well.
So maybe just a quick follow-up.
Okay,
Do we
sure.
have to use that heating system that type of heating system, or would it be better for cost and efficiency to just go with a different system?
I can answer that. I think that we provided questions to the District of Sicamous, and the decision was really based from an operational standpoint made by the operations team of District of Sicamous. So I think it would be a direction that you might want to explore internally, because Scott Builders took direction from DOS on what the systems that should be used was.
Okay, thank you. I do have a quick question to you, Will, before I.
Certainly.
The genset, the generator, if the power goes out, that generator will power the entire building, is that correct?
That's correct.
So.
It's sized to kick on there to be an automatic transfer switch, and the full facility would run as soon as it kicks over.
That's perfect. And so if labs have vaccines or blood sample, anything in the facility, that generator supports all of that.
That's
So
correct.
that's one of the comments that I wanted to just clarify. And the other thing is propane as opposed to diesel. And I know there's a big cost difference. I've been around both types of generators, and and I'm pretty sure this is an auto check generator as well. Like, it'll probably start itself once a week just to make sure it still functions. Some of them with the diesel create this whole big black puff of smoke and people wondering what's on fire. The propane ones are a little bit calmer and quieter. So that's something we need to take into consideration as well. And the diesel into, regarding our environmental footprint compared to propane. Sorry, that was just a comment. Kate, Councillor Beach.
Through the chair, thank you. I would like to just comment on the importance of having a generator, because in our current clinic for 40 years, we didn't have a generator. And when the power goes out and you're in an exam room, a closed exam room with your patient, your ability to look at them, see them, and heal them or treat them is nullified while the power's out. You literally shut those parts of your building down unless you're near a window, and most of the design is for those rooms are not going to be with window access. So it's critical. And your point about the storage of medicines and vaccines and different things that have to cool are important. So yeah, it's critical to have a generator to keep operational. And because we've got a building that is also open to community use, wouldn't it be horrible if we had a big function in the community open space and a band playing or whatever we're going to have, and the power goes off and that nullifies the whole event, which happened at Roots and Blues on the Friday, it happened, and they didn't have a generator. So I think it's just a smart move.
Thank you, Councillor Beach. Councillor Rich.
Through the chair. And again, on the generator, I think like on a whole different level and through different meetings, things I haven't thought about. But as we get more densified and we have more people and people move away from wood, heating, we do have a lot of power outages. We have a huge number of elderly. And when the power goes out and you don't have a backup heat, we're seeing now in different communities where actually people have to come into community space to keep warm. Because if we have a power outage for a day or two and it's -30, we're losing lives. And people need a warming station. And communities are now also talking about cooling stations. So when we have these hot days that we have places for people to go.
Absolutely.
So the generator also speaks to that, just for safety in our community. And that might not be 8, that could be 10 years from now, because if we look at our temperatures going up. So I think we do need to invest in a good generator.
I agree. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, I agree with everything council said regarding the generator.
Okay.
We live in a valley with mountains, and with Trans-Canada Highway and Highway 97, very narrow valleys. And we can't go through a winter without an outage. We always have a power outage in the winter. So, yeah, it only makes sense to prepare for it. Maybe our community space might be our emergency ops center too, right?
Yeah.
It would need a generator for sure.
Good point. Councillor Bushel.
Through the chair. Yeah, thanks, Brian and Will, for answering all those questions yesterday. Yeah, I just had a couple more. And with the generator, it's really a no-brainer. We should have one. I know maybe Daryl can speak on the diesel versus propane, because I think we have, I don't know how many diesel ones we have. We have quite a few of them. But for sure on the generator. But on the other thing, I did notice, looking at the office reception area, the front counter is probably about quarter of the size of the one we have now. So is there any possible way we can extend that front counter, to the hallway and just kind of open it up? Because you put any cabinets at the back of those seats like there is there, it becomes very, very tight when you're talking one or two people behind the counter. So I just thought if there's any way we can open that up a little bit.
Sure. I think what we need to make sure that we all understand is that this layout was completed for the purpose of showing to council how everything can fit in. It's not intended to be the final floor plan. And as such, what we intend to do is have a few rounds of discussion as it relates to what the providers need, what the other community partners need, what Splatsy needs. And then once we have that, then what we'll do is we'll have the architect and the interior designer actually sit down in a round table, kind of like a design charrette, and then we'll come up with an actual floor plan. So this isn't intended to be the be all end all floor plan. This is just intended to be a representation at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bushel, you want one more?
Yeah, I just want to ask Kelly, has Splatson given us a square footage? Yeah, do we know of the square footage? Is it going to be roughly that size, or can it be, is that too much, or can we use half of that size?
But we've shared this with them and they're happy with it. So I think, making their traditional healing space smaller, I don't know if that would be appropriate. I think we've already, it's down to I think it's around 1,300 square feet of the 15,000 square feet. So I think that's a reasonable amount. So we've shared this. They haven't said we want bigger or we want smaller. So I mean, there can be some minor tweaking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailey.
So just a question to Kelly. So you're proposing that we use the entire 1.73 million from the Growing Communities Fund to offset the cost overruns here?
Yes, yeah, and some of our reserves, yeah, our healing center reserves, correct.
Okay, and then, so when we were given that money, that money allowed us to do a lot of things with it, not just certain projects. It was a pretty broad, allowable basket of things that we are allowed to do, like housing and active community planning, things like that, right? That wasn't just for, specifically health related items.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I can answer that. So it was a very general, it's really what your community needs are. It's very much a blanket. So it could be used for water, sewer, whatever the needs are of your exactly, whatever the needs are of your community. So so we're applying it all to the healing center. So does that take away from another project we could apply it to? Definitely. But we did get permission and we are allowed to apply it to that. Yes.
Councillor McCabe.
I think our original budget, we got a grant of, let's round that up to 6 million. But we always thought that we would have to use a reserve of 2 million, pretty much from the beginning. And to get a brand new building that will house triple the space of our our health center, roughly triple our space for our health center. And to get, some revenue generators in there with the dentist and the pharmacy and physio and whatever, they'll need, confirmation that there's gonna be an extra power source in there. So the generator would also be a selling point to create revenue from the new building for tenants, saying that, you know, this building is one of the few in Sycamoose that has an alternate power source and power outages. But as far as the budget goes back to, you know, we always, as a community, all our public consultation, told the public that we would probably have to use about 2 million from our revenues or our reserves to fund this building. And $2 million for a new building is an opportunity that doesn't come to a small community like ours very often. So yeah, the cost is now up to 10 million, but the intent is still that it's costing us 2 million out of our reserves, which basically hasn't changed from the onset, from the beginning.
Councillor Rich and Councillor Evans.
Through the chair, is there a way, so we started at 8 million, we've got 1.7, it's gonna be over from there. So could we have not even turned to pieces gravel yet? So and that's okay. Is there a way to shell in some of this and like the Vernon Hospital, for instance, the top 2 floors are actually shelled in, ready to go. And when they get money, they will start opening those floors and as space is needed. So I don't know if that's an opportunity here. I see that it's 2 million now, but I think there's going to be an extra $1 million easily spent. And that's okay for what we're getting. I am for this project. I think the community absolutely needs it. And I always look at a 40-year plan, not a 5-year plan. But is there a way to go about doing this in phases, that we build the building to suit what we need now, and then we're able to open up more pieces of it as money comes in? And I've never built anything in my life, so I'll put that out there too.
So, Kelly, do you want to address that, or do you?
Yeah, I
Brian?
mean, Brian, do you want to
Yeah,
take that?
sure, absolutely. So that's a great point, and it's a great question. And Kelly asked us the same question. And where we ended up, if you look at the orange area on the plan, that's shelled in. So we already addressed that by shelling in a portion of the space. The medical space has to be built because obviously we're relocating from Finlayson Place. The traditional First Nations component of the building, that it was required under our Truth and Reconciliation component that gets built, and we allocate that monies for Splatsine to build out. The community space, I think everybody agrees that we want community space, so that has to get done. Restrooms have to be done. Perhaps the hydrotherapy area could be shelled in right now. So that area we're not exactly defined on how that is. We did have a couple of good meetings with the hydrotherapy provider that Karen Eastland and Pam Beach attended. So that isn't fully defined, but I would say the only other areas, like if you look at what could we take out, it's difficult because you still need circulation space. All the medical space is already pre-allocated in terms of use. Whether it's in this exact configuration or not is another thing. But I would say that the only space that can reasonably be shelled out is that orange spot right now. Also keeping in mind that, you know, the interior will follow the construction of the base building. So we'll have project management, site supervision, the electrician, the mechanical contractor, the drywaller, the painter, all those people are already be on site. If we go back and build something later, it probably costs 30% more to bring trades back to do the work. So that's another thing we want to keep in mind. So everything that makes appropriate sense to build now, I generally encourage to have done just to save on the costs to do it later.
Thanks, Brian. Councillor Evans.
Yeah, just a couple comments through the chair. I'm very encouraged with the fact that we've got we've got our CAO and CFO that are going to go over this line by line as we have ability to do that too. And I'm very encouraged by the 8 million confirmed grants, and also by the fact that every year there's more grants come available to help with these kind of things, and the fact that we're going to have an income generating building as well because that community space is gonna be booked. And people do not mind paying at all for a good community space. My job, the church that I work for pays the school $1,300 a month to rent the gym on Sunday morning. So and there's going to be more organizations that would gladly do the same thing for concerts and weddings and town hall meetings and different things like that are going to be able to rent the space. So, you know, it's going to be a well-used, well-loved building. The generator for sure. I mean, that's why Askew's is the spot to go. And I've been in town where for 2 days there's no power, and you know you've got a place you can go. And not to mention we can keep the clinic open and running so people don't lose their medical appointments. Just that. Somebody that waited a week can actually still have their medical appointment. So I'm really I know that we're going to do a good job of cutting where we can and making this project go forward, because it's we're being smart about it, and we always knew inflation. Councillor McKay had mentioned it was going to be something that was coming down the pipe. We knew this 3 years ago when plywood tripled, and it's come down quite a bit since then. So, you know, I think we're going to address the concerns very well.
Thanks, Councillor. But before I get to you, Councillor Bailey, I just want to make a note too that I've reached out, or that Search and Rescue has reached out to me. Although they're building a boathouse and will have a training facility in there, it's not always going to house all the stuff that they need to do. So they're very interested in renting this space when they need it as well. So I think the space is not even going to be an issue as far as it's sitting empty. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, well, I'm not so convinced that the space will be used as much as I guess others are. I mean, I look forward to seeing the business plan on it and the revenue that's going to come from that, because I think that's that's a huge piece that we're missing right now. We don't have that business plan. I know Kelly and Bianca's working on it. I have faith for them to put together something really solid there. But, you know, we have a lot of community space around Sycamoose. Anyways, I'm skeptical, but I'm trying to get through some of these questions here because I think they're really, really important, rather than, you know, I know I've been kind of on the opposite side of this. I've been looking at this project with a critical eye right from the beginning. I continue to do so, but now it's more around, I was okay with an $8 million budget. I don't know if I am okay with the $10.2 billion budget and us taking the entire 1.7 million, which, you know, kind of in the back of my mind, I was really hoping we're going to use for housing or other critical projects in Sycamoose. Obviously, we won't be able to have this project the way it is, and, you know, not use the entirety of that money. So I find that disappointing. But I want to get back to this question because we're talking about revenue generation. Well, we can have revenue generation in this building without that commercial space built out. So I wanted to ask the builders, you know, we're talking about 2,500 square feet. It's a shell. We're not going to do anything to it. When we go to get tenants, traditionally landlords build out the space for the tenant, especially if it's long-term. Sometimes you can split the cost, but roughly what would be the cost to kind of build out that additional 2,500 square feet? Because somehow it has to do that in order for us to get revenue from that space.
I can answer that. It depends, I guess, on what type of space it is. So for example, if IHA was to come in and they're building out his medical space, building medical space with all the plumbing and the smaller rooms and different requirements that you need for an exam room costs more money than if, for example, you were to rent it out to a third-party pharmacist who would just build it out themselves. So it could be anywhere from, you know, $70 a square foot to $200 a square foot, depending on the type of use. The other advantage too is, of course, if which, as we hope, IHA takes it, IHA builds the space out themselves without any contribution from the DOS. So it could be as low as $0. right? Or if we rent it to a third party, let's say a physiotherapist comes in or a dentist, then typically we give a small tenant improvement allowance, maybe $20 a foot, and then they put the rest of the money in themselves. So there are different opportunities if you're treating it as third party space as compared to if you're treating it as space for the DOS. And based on what we know from our layout right now, the DOS itself will not need that space. So it's going to be somebody else that's compatible, that the community decides is the appropriate adjacency in terms of compatibility to use. I don't know if that helps by way of answer.
No, I mean, yes, it does. Thank you. It is helpful. I guess I'm just trying to take a look at this through what normal commercial leasing kind of look like. I mean, when you build out a space, there's going to be a cost to the landlord. I mean, I really hope you're right that IHA would say, fine, we'll go long-term lease, and plus we'll pay you the top commercial rate that we would be looking for a new building, and we'll build out the space. I mean, that's obviously a big plus. That would be a dream. I'm not sure if even they would do that, but I guess it's a potential. But I think overall, we would have to have some sort of money set aside to put into that commercial space, whatever that level is, right? You know, let's call it $100 a square foot. Let's say we even kind of split it, but we're talking still six figures that we would need to put into that space, even in the best case scenario, in order to get that revenue out of it.
Kelly, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think we're starting to talk about the operating budget, so I'm just gonna go straight to some of the information I have for the operating budget and just because that's where the discussion is going. So I've done, just wanted to share something on this here. So I did some, just for starters, so our community space, I've just got some information on here. I'll try to make it a little bit bigger. So just for the community space part, so how are we monetizing some parts of this building? That's important, right? I know I've been worried about this since the beginning of this project, but I'm feeling much more comfortable with it as we're getting closer. So that's good for me. So we've got some rental rates of other community spaces just to kind of get an idea of what we could charge for that community space. And all these numbers, in my and Bianca's opinion, are very conservative numbers. We've used very low revenue numbers. So our occupancy in that health center, based on the number of washrooms and the square footage, is about 250. So that's actually the occupancy. And then it's got doors that go outside, and there's that patio area. So that whole space through the lobby and the community space is about occupancy of 250. So comparative, so that Song Sparrow Hall and Salmon Arm, it's a community space. It's got occupancy of 310. It's about 5,000 square feet. A day rate's $1,500 and hourly rate's $50. The Salmon Arm Rec Center, just some meeting rooms, 50 person occupancy. It's $220 a day, $32 an hour. Red Barn, 125 is the occupancy of Red Barn. The day rate ranges from $250 to $500 for public use. Hourly rate is $40 to $50. The Sicamous Arena upstairs, I wasn't sure about the occupancy or the square footage, but I do know that they charge $40 an hour for the use of that space. So here I'm thinking, you know, with the lobby and that it's just over 3,700 square feet, occupancy of 250. If we did a daily rate of 500, which I think is low, but I'm just throwing that out there, and an hourly rate of 50, that for starters could be reasonable. Interested tenants, just so everybody is aware, because we've done this expression of interest, for the behavioral health rooms in the back, which I'll show you on the diagram where they are. They're 10 by 12 behavioral health offices. We've so far had interest from a few people. Eagle Valley Community Support Society would like one office, and Colleen Bunbury. And what does she do? She's a lactation consultant. She does. She works with pregnancy outreach and
Prenatal care.
Right, so she's interested in all these offices. So those are two offices that we know now that people would like. And then in terms of commercial tenants, We've had formal responses from Life Labs saying they're interested. Dr. Jonathan Lowe, who's a dentist, is interested. A pharmacist, Bob Moore, is interested, and Interior Health says they're interested, but we have no firm commitment from them yet. So I'm just reiterating, there is no firm commitment there. So there are options with that commercial space.
No physios or?
We've talked with Megan. She's currently got her own spot over there. She's interested, but she also owns that piece. Talking to Megan, though, she has made it very clear there is more than enough room for another physiotherapist within the community. She's got a big backlog of patients, and there's definitely room there. And you know, we've been talking about this healing center since 2019, and I think there's some hesitancy until stuff starts coming to life. And I think even more people will come out of the woodwork once they start seeing stuff moving.
Kelly, can I just stop you for 1 second? Councillor Evans.
Just a couple of comments. For instance, when Dr. Bruce Prokopets moved into the strip mall before they acquired he put $1 million of renovations into the strip mall, opened up his dental office on his dime. And that's what would happen with something like that.
Yeah.
And secondly, Kelly is dead on when she says that's a conservative estimate. This is $300 for 3 hours at the school on a weekend. So that's this 3 hours. So I mean, you're gonna have, and not to mention the backlog of massage therapy and physio in this town, because if you had another space to rent, there would be people lining up to open a business to have RMT and physio. And just in a comment for Councillor Bailey, the community dance, Halloween dance was Saturday night, and there was a conflict that weekend, and there is often not community space available for these things because they're already booked. So again, I know I'm an eternal optimist, but I know that these things I'm saying are true. So
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Rich.
Through the chair, do we know what we spend on the rec program per month or per year for renting School District 83 and other spaces where we're trying to do pickleball and dance? Is this community space appropriate for some of our rec programs? But I know that sometimes we don't have places to hold dance and basketball and things like that, that we're always shuffling stuff. Is this something that's appropriate first? And what do we spend a year paying for rental space throughout the community?
Good question. So I did talk to Jamie about that. We actually don't spend a lot. It's a little bit at the Arts Council for dance. And at the school, maybe a couple thousand in a year. And I think there could be some programming and some day programming specifically that Jamie was talking about, that we don't have a spot even to do day programming. And the community space does go into 2 separate spaces too. So it makes it very versatile. So for a larger function, you can open it all up, and then it's got a slider in there, and you can have 1,800 square feet on one side and 1,200 on the other. So you could run some other type of program. And, you know, I don't think having a ton of rec programming is what we want in there, but I think offering some here and there that makes sense for that. I think focusing on, you know, talking with Carly, you know, AGMs, the Toda AGM as 100 people, it's a 3-day thing where people come to town. I think there's and those type of larger AGMs are on shoulder, like, you know, in April and October type of thing. So attracting, once we have a nice looking venue, those ceilings in there are going to be 20 feet tall. It's going to be a very nice looking building. So I think we'll be able to attract some different business type conference things in that facility moving forward. But yeah, it's a couple $1,000s a year, she said, a maximum for the rec stuff.
Thanks, Kelly. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thanks. So since we have the builders online, just want to ask another kind of question. I think we all know where this is going, but I have just questions on the finances of it and the risk, because this site has quite a few different issues that you outlined. One is a geotechnical one. We know about the archaeological one. So within this budget, and what are our site risks? Like, what do we I mean, there's a lot of potential that something comes up on the site, and I just want to try to get a better grip on, you know, if something does, what is our contingency plans? Like, what are some of our things that we could do?
Sure.
Yeah, for, go
Do you
ahead,
wanna-
Brian, then I
Yeah,
can
I'll
follow
say
up.
one thing first. So the identifiable site risks are somewhat mitigated because the site immediately beside us has been built on before, as a number of other main street sites. So for example, we have the geotech report from the DOS's municipal building. We know that other buildings have been built. We also know that this site was a disturbed site before, meaning that it had been dug up previously. So that mitigates some of the risk. The single largest risk, I would believe, is that if we dig and we find artifacts at some depth, which we hope we don't, because it was already tested, right, relative to the location. But you know, as you test for these things, you're putting a hole in a certain spot, and 2 inches away there could be a burial ground, right? We hope not, but that is the single biggest risk. I think will talk about the construction risk of it, but given that we have a fairly good idea of the geology of it, we know other buildings have been built in the area and the site has been disturbed before. Beyond the normal construction risks, which we'll articulate, I think we're good on those pieces, but the safeguard of the archaeological reporting that was done and the testing is not perfect. And Will, do you want to talk about the construction risk?
Yeah, from a geotechnical point of view, the geotechnical report identified a specific mitigation strategy. We've adopted that into the plan. It's been costed into the plan. From a geotechnical perspective, if as Brian said, geotechnical hole is one hole in the site or 10 holes in the site, if we find a pocket of unsuitable material that wasn't identified or that goes way deeper than it was, there's a potential risk there. However, having said that, again, we've got geotechnical fabric and grid throughout the site to mitigate the archaeological sort of drilling that occurred on the site as part of our strategy, and that's been costed out appropriately. So separate of finding something completely unforeseen, again, with the archaeological piece, we saw consistency in terms of what they were finding from a soil strata. They weren't finding anything that wasn't identified in the geotechnical report. Now, having said that, that was on a 3 meter by 3 meter grid. If we drill in the middle of that grid and happen to find a pocket of soil, well, then we'll have to mitigate that. But other than that, it's fairly consistent, and we have a strategy in place.
Thanks, Will. Councillor Beach.
Oh, thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to point out that the design of this building having a community area basically, as well as the health services area is great. It's great for the community use. And part of that we haven't really pointed out yet, although it's going to be in there, what do we say, shelled in possibly and put in later, is the hydrotherapy area. And I just want to point out to everybody that we looked at this and looked at the possible usages of such a hydrotherapy and aquatic pool. It wouldn't be large, but they're so wonderful now with moving water. It could be used for more than just rehabilitation. It could be made available to the public, and it will be a revenue generator as well, just so the public understands.
Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just have a really quick comment in terms of Councillor Bailey's question in terms of site monitoring and any risk we do have in the budget. There is 100, not in Scott Builder's budget, but in the district of Sycamoo's budget, we do have $100,000 buffer in here in case anything comes up during the construction related to the site. So there is some money set aside for that.
Thanks, Kelly. Ian, do you still have your hand up? Do you have another question?
Yeah, that actually answered that question. Thanks, Kelly, because I just wanted to know any kind of buffer that we had. Just go back to the builders just for one more question here. Sorry, I'm just looking for. So when we got the original estimate, and I just want to touch on this, building up the the property, because this property was always kind of in that flood zone. I just wanted to get you to maybe comment a little bit more why, you know, the building up part of that property kind of came as a bit of a surprise. And maybe that's because we changed where the building was going to go because of the archaeological stuff, but maybe just explain that a little further if you could for me.
Sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Go
Will.
ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Brian. and
It
I'll
was just
follow up.
it was a condition that just wasn't identified at the time. And it came out when they were working on the construction drawings through the engineering component of it. So when we had put the original Class C budget together, it was based on input from trades. It was not based on engineering input. So what they did is, for example, they calculated the cost of earthwork, the cost of working with the earthwork trades, the cost of the concrete, those types of things. When the civil engineer was onboarded and the civil design came up, and there was a deeper review in consultation with the DOS, then the specific engineering requirement was identified. We just failed to pick that piece up at the time because it usually comes up in the engineering circulation because it's a very technical consideration or technical element. So that was a miss.
Right, thanks.
Councillor Evans? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Bailey, do you have one more thing you want to ask?
Yeah, just have just one other question on, oh, sorry, you know, let's go to Councillor Evans and then I can
Councillor
put my
Evans, go
hand up
ahead.
again. Keith.
Yeah, and just to mention, the whole town of Sycamoose is a floodplain. Anybody ever gonna build anything, we are a floodplain town, so.
Councillor Evans?
Yeah, and further to that, I think it was a bit of a surprise to Will about the build up to the 351. And I know even for our other Main Street property here that we're working on, I know there are significant additional costs for raising a building up. And it's not common, right? But we are on a floodplain, so that's why we have to do it. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey, did you find your last question?
I do have another question. So I think I asked this question in email, but and it's a little difficult maybe for you to answer. If we were trying to keep within an $8 million budget, would that be possible with the design that we've given you?
No.
That's a great question. Yeah.
Will and Brian?
Not the design that we currently have. It cannot be done. Other, you know, in addition to the identified site work things, the cost of construction has increased. And so with the increase in the cost of construction across a number of trades, the pricing just continues to go up. One other interesting or point of note is that given the construction schedule looking at right now, there is a winter condition allowance carried in the budget, which is appropriate if we're going to proceed today, meaning this winter with this commencement of the construction of the building. The building could be started in the spring to defer some of that expense, the risk being that the cost of construction may go up between now and then, and you may spend that money because it would have to be rebid at that time. But every 30 days, like the way these subtrades, you know, of the 255 subtrades and the 70 that were selected or 40 that were selected, their pricing is only good for 21 days from the time they price because they have material pressure as well. So every 30 or 45 days, the price of construction goes up. And that is why, in summary, the original building can't be built at that price anymore.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, we have those challenges with the hospital in Salmon Arm as well as the Bruin Bridge, and everything that's been on the books and sitting on the books has gone up substantially. Councillor McCabe?
Yeah, and thank you through the chair. It's not just cost escalation that we're talking about. It's also our scope statement that we got our original funding for our 5.95. If we change that scope too much, we lose our 5.95. And maybe Kelly can touch on that because I think it's been revisited once already.
Over to Kelly.
Yeah, so we did modify the scope because originally the building was a lot larger in the original grant application. So we did modify it to make it a 15,000 square foot building. Yeah, so we've modified the scope. So the design of the building doesn't really matter. I mean, we've already gone with this design, but if we change the design, but the footprint itself we're committed to 15,000 square feet.
Reduce our funding.
Yeah, or a reduction thereof.
Councillor Rich.
Through the chair. So just, you're saying that the budget's gonna change every 3 weeks. If we sign up tomorrow, which we're not, because we're not meeting tomorrow. Are we?
You could.
When is the door gonna open? Like, when can we open the front doors?
Brian, she's asking for an opening.
Oh,
of
so
the
so
facility.
opening date?
Yeah.
So
Project.
if we start construction now, we'll jump in if I'm wrong on this. The shell building will take approximately 6 months to build.
6 months.
During the construction of the shell building, the interior will commence. So we'll complete the interior design starting in the end of November through December, have the interior going forward. The interior will drag the completion of the construction out another 5 months or 6 months. So I think construction total timeframe to be safe would be 10 months from the day
10 to
we break
11
ground.
months. 10 to 11
Wow.
months. So
Okay, thank
you would be next year, mid next year. If we hold off until spring and start in March, April, then you'd be 10 to 11 months from that start date.
Hey, Councillor Beach,
That's okay.
that's okay. CAO, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so if on the 22nd, we bring, an awarding of the 6.4 million to start, and so you can secure the sub trades.
Yep.
Does that mean you're going to be, just for clarity for council, does that mean you're going to be starting right away? Or does that mean you will look at the schedules of everybody and determine, like, they may very well commit to that price and start more in the spring, correct? Or
Correct. I mean, we need approval we need approval to move into contract, and then we would work with the sub trades, and then secure their schedules. I mean, if you're in the aptitude or want to start right away, we certainly can start right away. We start spending winter construction dollars right away. But we can secure trades, work with their schedules. We may start in March or February and save some of your winter construction allowance for that perspective. The reason for a construction allowance, it gives you and full control of that allowance. You see everything with respect to how it's spent. If the winter's colder, it obviously eats up more money. If the winter's warmer, then whatever I don't spend, you get back. Right? I don't keep it. That rolls back to you as an allowance.
Thank you, Will. Council, any more questions?
Yeah, I do. I have my hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bailey. Sorry, you weren't on the screen.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, just a question. So on this budget, we have the shell and then we have the interior. What is actually fixed price at this point? Because I heard earlier that the interiors, that price is still fluid. Is
Right.
that
So
correct?
we have fixed price the building shell and building site development. We have also had pricing come back in from the same sub trades that we fixed the price for the shell and site. The issue is they're not fully engineered drawings, so they're budgets right now. Yeah, ideally, we work through the engineering and we tender it the latter part of the year, the first part of next year. That's when we would historically see our best construction pricing, right, at the beginning of the year. So we get the engineered drawings. These people are already on site. We would expect to see that cost or less.
Okay.
And I had my project manager on site on the call as well. I'm not sure if she's still here, but she could potentially comment it to it as well. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, just a follow-up question, because
Yeah.
I just want to be clear on what what we're looking at. So, and maybe Kelly can chime in here too. So let's say this all goes through finance, and we would do finance, and then we would do a vote that evening. And then that would just be for the shell building and site. And then we would have to wait for additional costing on interior And then that would be, whatever that would be, that would come in at a potentially different price than this once we had everything laid out. Is that kind of, do I have that process correct, or?
Are you wanting me to respond to that? I'm not sure who you're asking.
Well, kind of both, like, I
Yes.
mean, the shell building and site, that's the dollar figure there. You have that
Right.
lockdown.
That's
but
locked
the other
in.
one isn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other one's not. That's a conservative price. Like the trades that we engaged with gave us a conservative price. They didn't give us a bare bones price when they were looking at that. And they
Okay.
based it on a start relatively quickly. So again, we're impacting how they're pricing it, right? So we anticipate as we engineer, if the drawings stay from as per the concept layout, we don't take too long to get them fully engineered. I'd anticipate that cost to be there or less.
Kelly, did you want to comment?
Yeah, and just to confirm the timing, correct? So the 22nd would be the shell and the site, because that's a firm price. And then in November, December, we work on solidifying the interior. So we are happy with that, so they can get engineered drawings. Then Scott Builders would tender that out in January. So then hopefully at the end of January, beginning of February, we would have hard numbers, firm numbers for the interior, and then that will follow. Is that clear, Ian?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. You are correct, yeah.
Hey, Ian, are you good now?
I still have the
those are-
operating budget to go.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah.
Unless Ian has another.
Do you have another question, Ian, or can we carry on?
No, I was actually going to touch on the operating budget. I'd like to go back to that if we could.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to share. I wonder if that's on there. No, it isn't. Stop sharing. So this is some preliminary figures. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. I don't know why I do it, but that's okay. So we have some, we'll start with the community space here. And I don't have a year on it. I have years 1 to 5, because, not knowing exactly when we're starting, when it'll be operational, but sounds like beginning of 2025. Hold on. Okay, so community space rental revenue. I think we've been pretty conservative. We said $1,000 a month. So let's say we rented for 2 days in an entire month. I think that's pretty low. And I know there's flexibility to rent hourly and different rates for the different rooms. So year one, we've got down $1,000 a month, but then year 2, I've increased it by 50%. Another 50%, because I feel like this year 1 is low. So year 2, I've added more, and then I think it's increased by 2 or 5% thereafter. Which I think we could, I think that's reasonable. Third-party lease space. So I've got $15 per square foot, which I mean, I know right over here, it's $14 a square foot. I know when we did the expression of interest, they were talking about $17 a square foot to $20 a square foot to charge there. So I've got $15 a square foot, and I have not included any triple net. So normally a tenant would pay a portion of the operating cost of the building as well. I have not included any of that. So it's a very low conservative rate for commercial. And the first 2 years as well, I've decreased that by 50% to offset any allowance or any additions for some tenant improvements. So just in terms of that 2,500 square feet, talking to a few other people in Salmon Arm and in Sicamous who have built commercial rental spaces. What happens frequently, especially on a new build, is there's a few ways you can negotiate that. So one way would be, hey, we'll give you a tenant allowance of $25 a square foot. You build all this and we'll give you that allowance on occupancy. Another way you could do it is reduced rent over a certain amount of period, or free rent for a certain amount of period. It really depends on the cash flow of the person who's wanting to go in there, as well as what their requirements are. But typically it's the tenant that does the majority of it. But for the building structure, we would have to to do a little bit. So whether it's just a reduced rate, a free rate, or for a year, or some kind of tenant improvement allowance. So for this particular example, I just reduced the rent by 50% for the first 2 years to recognize, you know what, we're going to get less revenue. And I mean, this is clearly in a perfect world where all the revenues start exactly on year one. It'll be a little bit trickly, but I just wanted to show kind of where we're at. Behavioral health spaces, I've got 3 offices at $200 a month for an office, which I think is fair and more than reasonable at $7,200 a month. And then the physio space at $750 per month, which works out to $9,000. So these, the office spaces and the physio spaces, just so it was applied consistently, if you took the square footage of those, it works out to about $15 per square foot, a little less actually. For the office and the physio space, we're not going to be charging them like a commercial tenant. It'll probably be more like a fixed amount per month because they're in our space, not a separate lease space. So it'll look a little different. But those are some general numbers used here for what our revenues will be. Year one might be a little less, might be a little more. We don't know because it'll all depend on once we start building and securing some tenants, then we'll have some real numbers to work with. But I don't think these numbers are off. If anything, I think they're conservative. And then we have rent increasing year 3 here because we have $15 per square foot, which I do think is low in a brand new facility. And we would also get some kind of triple net. So we get some kind of reimbursement of our operating costs for this space, which I have not included as well. And then our costs for the building. So we've got a quote from MIA based on the cost of the building or the value of the building. It's about $10-11 million for the insurance of the building. So the building insurance. And then based on our costs for so this building is 14,000 square feet. So we've taken some comparative, we have a few buildings. So we've looked around and take some comparatives of what our actual costs are. So we're janitorial 12,000, and that only includes the space that's not the health center piece, because we already have a health center budget that we're going to be merging in with here. This is just the other parts of the building. So 12,000 for janitorial, garbage collection of 600, which is $500, which is what we pay for our garbage here, a monthly, HVAC maintenance, security, IT, other, and propane hydro of 25,000, which I think is high given what we pay here, but we wanted to be more conservative on that. So total operating costs just of the building, just to have that building, we're saying it's between 70 to 80,000 a year. So year 1 and 2, there's a deficit because of the tenants, but then it washes out pretty much after that. And then we have this estimated existing clinic deficit. So we've just got a placeholder of 80,000 per year. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. If we look at what we've had in the past, in 2021, it was 112,000. In 2022, it was 139. And this year, we're expecting it to be about 74,000. So with more space for more doctors will generate more income, right? So I think putting 80,000 flat is also conservative because we are going in a reduced direction, and we will have more space for more doctors, which is what generates the income for us. So then if you look at the total deficit for running the facility as well as having the building, it ranges from 100 and it goes up to 80, right? And I think I'm fairly confident that we can do a lot better than that, but just preliminarily looking at, you know, we also want to be conservative. And we've carried a deficit just to have the medical clinic itself since its inception, and it really hasn't, we've managed to, we're pretty financially responsible, and we don't waste money on things that we don't need in our operational budget. So, I mean, anyway, so I'm just sharing that with you. And I do think there's an opportunity as well. This doesn't include any potential contribution we can get from the CSRD, right? Some cost sharing that we're going to look for. CSRD currently has a cost contribution agreement with the North Shuswap, I believe, to help fund some of that facility as well. And we do have a pretty significant patient panel from the surrounding area. So there is an opportunity. We've already brought it to the CAO's attention. So there is an opportunity to also get a cost contribution from the surrounding area as well for this facility.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Any questions, guys? Councillor McCabe?
So I think it's pretty, thank you for your report. I think it's pretty realistic to get cost sharing from the regional district. I think that's a realistic thing. And if we were to land Interior Health as an anchor tenant, you know, I think it looks promising. I mean, when we first bought the building in Finlayson, we're running deficits of about 174,000, I think, and then when we bought the clinic, or the building and then the clinic, we run deficits around 174,000, and I think staff has gotten that down to 80,000 or something now. And so I think you've done a good job of trying to forecast what this might look like, but it's early days. You have to, you know, put a year under a belt, and got a great staff to look at savings where we can find them. And revenues.
And you know, this is a service that we offer our community, access to medical services. So our recreation costs us 120,000 a year to operate. Our snow removal is just under 200 or 180,000 to operate each year. So if it's another service that we, you know, having access to medical and having a community space that people can use and all that kind of good stuff is another service that we offer. But definitely, I mean, since day one, I have scrutinized the operating budget. You can ask Karen. We are we recognizing it's a new service that a lot of municipalities don't offer. And we need to make sure we're very mindful with that moving forward and watching our revenues and our expenses.
Thanks, Kelly. And you're right. I mean, you guys have done a brilliant job, and you're not a lot of communities own their healthcare centers, and we could literally be without one here. We are a growing community. We have a panel of 3,000 now. I understand that our community grant fund at 1.7 is going to contribute to this, but we also have housing on Main Street. We've got, you know, a builder looking at that. We've got that well under control right now. So we are adding 36 units of, you know, senior housing. We're adding 50 some odd units across Main Street, and it's all happening together. But in our community, to have a healthcare center that offers as much as this one will, we're very fortunate to do that. We would not be able to attract a doctor if we did not have this facility on its way. When Dr. Connick started here 5 years ago, the first thing she did was walk into the 40-year-old building over there and start painting and ripping and taking tile. She had a really tough time moving into that facility. So I think that a doc coming into Sycamoose now and looking at this facility and how well run it is, and Kelly, your team, Bianca, Daryl, you guys have done a brilliant job of looking at this and scrutinizing this. And so from council, I just want to say thank you very much. I think I believe that this is one of the most important projects that we have in our community to support our community. So I just want to say thank you. Councillor Rich.
Through the chair, I completely agree with you, Madam Mayor. And I think we have to really look at that too, that if we do not have a facility in Sycamoose, people are going to not only lose their family doctor, but they're going to lose their time to get into the doctor. And I keep saying this in council, but it's a sometimes less than a 24-hour wait. And I have never had to wait over a day to see a doctor. And that is unheard of across Canada. So what we are doing is actually groundbreaking, and we need to be very careful that we keep this in our community, and it's a diamond, you know, and so, and it is expensive, and we have to watch our dollars, and we do not want people's taxes going up, and we're doing all that, but we also need a healthy community. We have a lot of elderly folks here. And I don't know how many people have had to go into Salmon Arm to a walk-in clinic, but you're waiting 6 hours if you can get in. And we don't have that. And we're very lucky. That's not something that's heard of in Canada. It's not even BC, it's Canada. So I think we do really need to keep moving forward on this project and be cost conscious. But we're lucky to have this, and it's been well thought out of, and it has to do with staff, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, Kelly. Councillor Bailey, then Councillor Beach.
Yeah, I mean, everybody supports this healthcare center. I use it often. I think they do a great job. There's no question about the value that it brings to the community. I think what we're talking about here and what I'm talking about here is just the scope and size of this budget, and it concerns me. It really concerns me that it's gone up 2 million. I understand the reasons behind that, but I also understand using all of our other grant funding that I thought would be available for other things is it's a bit of a letdown for me. Nobody is saying that we don't need another healthcare center or a new one. I question whether we might need a $10.2 million one. That's my opinion. Whether we could do something within a lower budget would be my ideal, but I'm certainly not questioning the value or the need for a healthcare center. This is coming down to dollars and cents. I think I know where the rest of the council is, and that's totally okay. But in no way is my comments should be taken as not being supportive of our healthcare center or any of the things that they are doing. I think they are doing great work. I think the question in my mind is this the right project to, for our town and going forward with the price tag that's attached to it. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, through the chair. Siobhan, thank you for all your really great comments about the service at this center. It is unique. We are very fortunate. So we do need to keep moving forward and support a center that is going to keep attracting professionals here to work as a team and to serve the people. There are no other places around that can get an appointment within a day, sometimes within the same day. And many places where people have family doctors, they don't even get to have a phone call conversation for maybe 2 weeks. So it is bad in other cities. We are doing very well with this, and we're very fortunate. It isn't just about a center for people who are sick, though, and that's what I love about this center. It is for the whole community. It is for a community to stay well and keep themselves fit. We have the opportunity to design it for all of the community and not just for people who know they need it. Because the people in the community that think they're well don't see why we need to do this. It's only when you're sick when it makes any sense to you, but we're building a community that is offering all sorts of services here. So it's much more than a health clinic, much more than a health.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Beach. Council, we're going to have to get moving here. Anything else, Council? Okay, Will, Brian, thank you guys very much for all your information today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you,
let's.
Council.
Thank you. Okay, Sarah, legislative update, please.
Thank you through the chair. Just in consideration of time, staff is wanting to keep council apprised of any legislation that's coming forward from the province. As we know, local governments are creatures of the province. We did attack the quick scribe civic laws report. We have since learned that if you don't have a login, some of the links don't work. So staff is looking at revamping the format in the future, but these reports come monthly and the information is there. I'm not sure if council wants to discuss any of it. I know we're pressed for time, but we can have, more discussion at a future meeting if that works with council.
Thanks, Sarah. I love it. The ones that I did click on and get in, it's always good to know what's coming at you. And because sometimes we get blindsided and we went, where did that come from? So I do love it. And so, yeah, let's work on making it accessible for all of us. Counselor Evans.
Just to echo, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Counselor McCabe.
Yeah, some of this stuff isn't active. It's going to come into legislation and there's timelines for that. But I tried to scroll through the housing sections and everything they're proposing to do, we're doing. So.
I know.
No surprises there.
No, no, I went to, never, I know. Okay, so I guess we just want more information and keep it coming.
Great, thank you.
Council meeting schedule, Kelly.
Yeah, so this is something that annually needs to be published, which is our 2024 meeting schedule. So this will be in the newspaper shortly. And before we publish them, I just talked to Sarah and we thought we have canceled a few summer meetings. We make a resolution to cancel a few summer meetings. If we don't have them on this schedule, we don't have to do a resolution to cancel them. So really, it's just brought before you today to see if, you know, you had a desire to cancel any in the summer, like a July and August one, or if you just wanted one, or you just wanted to leave it how we've always done it and then done a resolution later on, or not.
So I feel like we have a lot going on, so I think that we should leave it as is. And if we have to cancel something, then we cancel it. But I think that this summer is going to be super busy for Main Street and everything that we have going on. So council, how do you feel? Councillor McCabe?
I agree with Madam Mayor. I think it's too far ahead to try and practically just take it off the schedule. I think once it gets closer, we'll have to go through the administrative process of changing it.
Councillor Beach?
Yeah, through the chair, I agree. I think that there's a lot happening, so.
Councillor Bushel?
I agree.
Rich? Yep. Councillor Evans?
Ditto.
Councillor Bailey?
Agree.
What's the rest of our schedule for this year? That's a stupid question on my part.
Yeah,
What are the dates for the rest of the council meetings this year?
Yeah, it's November 22nd and December 13th. And then we have finance meetings, which will be going into your calendar shortly, also November 22nd, December 7th, and December 13th
Thanks.
at 10.
they're all in our calendars already.
They're in, perfect.
I think you've sent them. I think you've all sent them. Okay.
Through the chair, they are in the calendars. I just don't know if everyone's been sent them directly, but we'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, let's make sure.
Okay.
they pop in. Perfect. Okay. Moving right along. Counselor Evans, you Downtown Community Events Board.
Thank you. I would just like to propose the idea of exploring building a outdoor version of what's on our bulletin board when you walk in from Main Street for community events. When I was in the credit union lobby a couple weeks ago, putting up a Kids Zone poster, it occurred to me what they have in Quesnel, and that was when you're downtown in a good spot. There's a double-sided, and we could have this in a couple spots. There's a double-sided behind plexiglass, approved by the front desk for community events. People know that the poster maximum size is 8.5 by 11, but it's out there. So when people are walking both directions, they can see these events, and it gives greater visibility. Right now, you'd have to walk off the street to see ours or walk into the credit union to see some. It would also help save us the eyesore of notices on wooden poles, and it would just clean up downtown, but also make it more user friendly for nonprofit community groups. So I had to go into credit union and say, can I put this up? They said, yes, you can. And so I would like to propose us looking into something like that for a couple of key locations in town where we think it would be the best use.
There used to be a board at the post office. Remember that? And everybody used to post their stuff, and that's where I found out all my,
Mhm.
but
Drugstore used to.
yeah. So council, that should we give Daryl some, or staff some, go ahead, Councillor McKay.
It's a good idea, but to make it effective, it has to be maintained and you're talking staffing resources to do that.
Yes.
You know, weatherproof, sometimes water gets in and then, you know, some posters get stained.
Yeah, the one in Quesnel had
On it.
a peak to prevent the weather, and then it was behind really nice clear plexiglass, and only staff could go in there with the person and put up the notices. So
Yeah, the only downside I see, I think it's a great idea. It's just capacity of staff to maintain it. Keep it timely.
yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Rich.
Mr. Chair, I think it's a great idea. I'd like to see one at the beach park too, because we got so many people going through there and at the beach and doing stuff. And then if we've got yoga in the park or music in the park or something else happening in town. That, and I understand it is staff time, but we also have the chamber kids down there on the building. And it's just more places to get information.
Maybe it doesn't need to be staff time, though. Maybe it's the responsibility of someone. Maybe it's not a locked unit. Maybe it's someone takes their poster down and puts a new poster up. Like, I don't know if we should be downloading this to staff. They're busy as it is, so I'm not quite sure who would get this task. So, and I understand, I get it. I think there's some logistics that need to be figured out here. Councillor Burchell.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think, maybe we tie it in with the ECDev and the chamber, and maybe it's skewed into the fee for service, or something, and, it's kind of up their alley too. So, I think
Yeah.
it's a great idea. And Carly's got these new kiosks, being built around town, and
Mhm.
been working on that for quite a few years.
That's right, she does too. Go ahead.
One of the reasons I'd like to see something like this is because there have been many times where people have said, well, I didn't know that was happening. I wish that I could have done it. For instance, I saw the Oktoberfest, October 21st seniors dinner. One poster, I bumped into it. That was the only one I saw. And, we could have had maybe 20, 30 more seniors there if there'd been more spots around town where it was visible. So just thinking about the community and
I agree. I don't know if you're gonna capture everyone because they're always gonna miss it. We're always, sign it. Yeah. Sarah, go ahead.
Through the chair, I just wanted to add, I think Kelly's thinking the same thing right now. We do have a community calendar on our website, and there is an option to submit your community event. So we would just encourage anyone that's hosting an event. It's for not-for-profits, so we don't typically advertise for business, but if you're a nonprofit group and you're providing an event for the community or a service, they can submit a request, and then we can populate it there and also share it on our reader board as well. That's digital, but I just wanted to share that.
Can we do a subscribe to that? So you can, how you get your newsletter every month? Can you do a subscribe to that community calendar? So it just comes to your inbox if people are interested in what's going on in the community?
Through the chair, yes, there is an option through the community calendar page. And maybe what we can do is also just, share some information about that on our social media so that groups are aware, because they may not be aware that that feature exists.
Yeah. Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
Oh, no, and what was I going to say? This community calendar, actually, I was going to confirm with Sarah. I think it's actually one of our most popular hits on our website. So we get data about our website pages and what is the most popular. I think this is the most popular, isn't it? And second is the traffic circle.
Traffic circles first.
Yeah,
But it's one of the top three. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Oktoberfest at the senior center is on here too. And there is a subscribe button. So you're right. I think it's somewhat used, but we could promote it better. And perhaps with the outdoor bulletin, we could see what financially it would cost to build some of these. And
go ahead, Daryl.
Through the chair. So ECDev has installed, Public Works has installed a number of them for ECDev. We've got one at the 97A trail, Main Street Landing. We've got one of the big kiosks as well with the little peaked roof. Silver Sands parking lot going to the beach park. And by the houseboat, that empty lot there, that's what I know. there's still materials in our yard to do a few more. And so maybe, you know, I could facilitate a conversation between you and I and Carly and see if maybe she wants to give up one side of it, because she's got plans for one side for sure, but they're two-sided, so.
Cool.
You know, maybe we could pick a spot. We got new things coming around town. Maybe the pump track might be a great spot to have a little,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
We can talk about it.
Counselor McCabe.
If we do move forward with this, I was thinking maybe if we could try and encourage people that are using it to include a QR code. Because everyone seems to be, just take their camera, take a picture, and then it could be an expanded message, not just the little poster, right? So we could maybe try, if we do go down this road, to try and encourage people to have a QR code on their posters.
I know Carly's thought about that. I think that is in the plans.
Thanks. All right.
Good idea.
Cool. All right. Well, we're talking about it.
Good stuff.
Thank you, Counselor Evans. Okay, moving right along, Counselor reports. Counselor Evans, do you want to start up?
I'm good.
You're good? Counselor Rich?
Had the housing committee meeting, which was great, and we're looking forward to next year.
Excellent. Counselor Bushel?
I have a lot. We did the passive tax exemption with Bianca there for the nonprofits. We had that meeting. Also, the biomass tour was a really nice tour. We had that, good to see how that building works, and Daryl had his team over there showing us how it worked, and it's pretty cool. Working well. Fielding lots of calls. I've been talking to Daryl about the ball diamonds. They cleaned them up, as like Bob was talking about the weeds in the center field or the infield. We talked about 2 Mile, had some complaints about, there's vehicles on the 2 Mile trail between Bayview and the dump. People getting wood from there and maybe not cleaning up after themselves. So we're looking for some trail signs that were not all our trail lines, trail signs weren't all installed. All those ones around the community. There was supposed to be some more, and I think the Bayview Trail was supposed to be on there, but anyway, so we're gonna find some kind of nice wording that we can put up there that they're not wrecking the trail up there. And then the last one was the tennis courts. We had a presentation, Rod Bailey did a presentation about the tennis courts. So we resurfaced them, and we're gonna resurface the tennis court, but they took down Rod agreed to take down the backstop board. But now everybody's calling and saying, where's the backstop board? So anyways, so we're gonna figure that out. We're gonna figure it out, but lots of calls, you get lots of calls, when.
Counselor McCabe?
Yeah, not much to report. Housing committee meeting. Things are moving along good there. That's about it for myself.
Counselor Beach?
Yeah, I can remember. I did the biofuel tour, and it was awesome. I think we learned a lot, sort of about the potential and why we can have to burn certain wood and all that stuff. So it was really interesting, and I'm looking forward to another tour in Enderby of their facility to learn more. So that was great. And then now we're just starting, Siobhan and I are starting to talk about more education on community safety and in the new year. So we're beginning to put our heads together around that, and we'll be reaching out. I've already reached out to the RCMP and stuff like that. So there'll be topics coming up. I'm saying that because it's going to come up on the winter schedule as being planned. We just haven't set dates yet. So we're probably looking at the end of January and in February for sessions.
Perfect, thank you. Counselor Bailey, are you still out there?
I am. I don't have anything.
Are you having fun?
I will be.
What?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. Good. I went to the committee of the whole meeting with the CSRD, and there's some nuggets from there. BC assessment presentation by Graham held. I think that we should look at bringing Graham in here and doing presentation to council. He had some really interesting stuff, and not everything is about the DOS taxes. It's, BC assessments and everything that's attached to that. So I think education's always good. as well as Anita Eli, the Interior Health Specialist for Environmental Health Officer. She shared a lot of interesting things too. So I think that it might be a good idea for her to have a, a delegation with us as well. Something else that came up was the remuneration bylaw for the CSRD board members. So that was kind of one of those prickly little subjects that you really don't want to talk about. So it was deferred to 2024 because we didn't want to talk about it. And it's really interesting how the CSRD board members are very, very committed to their areas and what they do. And you would think that, and they're not paid that well. I mean, these are, board members, remunerations, but they're all about the community. So I was very impressed with them pushing back. So that's awesome. We had a bit of a, okay, maybe I'll just leave that open now. On last Friday, I went to the Poppy Fund, raising campaign kickoff over at the Legion. So I'm hoping obviously everyone's picked up their poppies and contributed to funding that. Don't forget Saturday at the Cenotaph. The US had a meeting with BC 55 Games, which is a great opportunity for Sicamous. We have a lot of great spaces to add value to that event, for those events. So they are looking at Sicamous, but it is also shoulder season. So it is in September, which is a bonus for our community. And maybe turn it into looking like an annual event. I mean, the space might be the best place, right? So I went to a tourism advisory committee as well with Carly, and it was a great meeting, great information about the vision of tourism. But we are so fortunate here, and somebody said it earlier, we really are visionary. We really do forward think, because a lot of this stuff, it was like, hey, yeah, we do that, and yep, we're already on that. So it's always interesting to be able just to nod and smile when but there's a lot of good nuggets there as well, what Carly will probably share. The holiday light up is December the 2nd, and the parade. Fire department on Sunday does a food bank and toy drive, so let's not forget about that. And December 15th this year is the holiday train food bank, so put those on your calendars as well. And that's it for me. Okay, do we have any questions from the gallery or online? The bear has some bear. Yep, the bear. Anybody online? Anyone? Deb, do you have anything? Okay, that sounds great, and thank you very much. Okay, recommendation that the committee of the whole meeting for November the 8th, 2023 be adjourned at 3:13. Councillor Evans, Councillor Rich, all in favor, carried.
Coffee.
Thank you, everyone. Thank